Hi, I'm Leora. I never told my fiancé how much I really make. 65,000 a month. He liked thinking I was simple, easy to manage. But the night his mother invited me to dinner, she handed me an envelope with $700 inside and said, "Take this and disappear." Everyone laughed until I paid the bill with my black Centurion card. That's when the room went silent, like they'd seen a ghost. And before we dive in, tell me, what time is it where you are right now? Because for me, that night, time stopped. Pause. You think money buys freedom, but sometimes it just buys you a front row seat to betrayal. I never told Holden how much I made, not because I wanted to deceive him, but because I wanted peace. He liked to believe I lived simply, that I didn't care about money. For months, I let him keep that illusion because it seemed to comfort him. It made him feel like the protector. And for a while, it made me feel safe. But things changed when his mother, Evelyn Kress, invited me to what she called a small family dinner. It wasn't small. It was a stage. Every fork, every candle, every glance felt rehearsed. I'd been to business dinners more honest than that night. Her house sat on a hill overlooking the Sound. Glass, marble, and silence. The kind of silence that warns you you're being watched. Evelyn greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You must be Laura," she said smoothly, holding my hand like it was something fragile. "Leora," I corrected softly. "Oh, of course." She smiled again, but her eyes barely flickered. I followed her into a dining room that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Holden's relatives were already seated. 3 uncles, 2 cousins, all with the same brand of polite arrogance. A jazz record played quietly, too perfect, too calm. Dinner started with small talk, safe topics, practiced laughs. Then the questions began. "So, what do you do, dear?" Evelyn's friend asked, sipping white wine. "I manage marketing operations for a tech startup." "Oh," she said, dragging the word out like it had weight. "Do they pay well for that sort of thing?" It wasn't curiosity, it was assessment. Holden smiled faintly, oblivious. He was telling his cousin about some golf trip, not realizing that I was under quiet cross-examination. Then his cousin, the corporate lawyer, chuckled and said, "I looked you up, Leora. Hope you don't mind. Just wanted to make sure our Holden wasn't marrying into debt." He laughed like it was a harmless joke. Evelyn didn't laugh. Her smile only sharpened. "You've done quite well for yourself," she said, tilting her head. 65,000 a month, wasn't it? The room went still. Holden's fork slipped from his hand. "Wait, what?" My throat tightened. I wanted to keep my calm, but my pulse thudded in my ears. "I didn't think it mattered," I said, quietly. "It matters," Evelyn replied. Her tone was polite, but her meaning was clear. Holden stared at me like I'd been keeping a secret that changed everything. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. How could the woman sitting beside him have been wealthier all along? To them, my success wasn't something to be proud of. It was an offense. So I smiled, folded my napkin neatly, and let the moment pass. My silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. The rest of dinner was a balancing act. Evelyn complimented my earrings. "They're lovely. Did Holden buy them for you?" "No," I said. "I bought them myself." Her lips twitched before she caught herself. For a brief second, the room tilted in my favor. That was my first small win. The kind you don't show on your face. You just tuck it away for later. As the meal dragged on, the conversation shifted toward charity, family businesses, and values. Every word was a reminder that I was an outsider looking in. Evelyn leaned back in her chair and smiled sweetly. "It's important for us to know the kind of women who want to join our family." She didn't need to say more. I understood. I wasn't one of them. After dessert, Holden and I stood by the car in the driveway. The night air was cold, crisp, the kind that stings your lungs when you breathe too deeply. He didn't look at me. "You should have told me," he said. "I was going to, but I didn't want it to change how you saw me." He sighed, shaking his head. "It changes everything, Leora. You let me believe." "I let you believe what you needed to," I said, cutting in gently. "That doesn't make it a lie." He didn't answer, just opened the car door for me, too polite to argue, too proud to listen. We drove home in silence, the kind that doesn't fade, it builds. When we got back to my apartment, he said he needed space to process things. I nodded, even though I'd already started building walls inside my mind. After he left, I stood by the window, looking out at the city lights flickering below. I could still hear Evelyn's voice in my head, her words smooth as silk and twice as cutting. "It's important for us to know the kind of women who want to join our family," I whispered to the empty room. "Then you'll know exactly who I am." That night, I didn't sleep. My mind kept replaying every smile, every question, every glance across that perfect dinner table. Something had shifted. The peace I'd tried so hard to protect was gone. What replaced it wasn't anger, not yet. It was a quiet certainty that I was now part of a game I never asked to play, and I was done pretending not to know the rules. By morning, the weight in my chest hadn't moved. I hadn't slept, but I was dressed, lips glossed, and hair pulled into a neat twist before the clock hit 10. If I was walking into a trap, I wasn't about to arrive looking unprepared. Evelyn had left a message the night before. "Come by tomorrow, just the two of us." She didn't ask, she summoned. The drive to the Cress estate felt longer this time, even though I'd taken it before. Maybe it was the air, or maybe it was the fact that I now knew what game I was playing, and with whom. By the time I stepped into the grand foyer, a maid had already opened the door like she'd been waiting. "Mrs. Cress is in the sunroom," she said, guiding me down a hallway that smelled faintly of old wood polish and something floral. Jasmine, maybe. Something elegant and calculated. The sunroom wasn't sunlit. Heavy drapes kept the morning out. Evelyn sat on a cream-colored couch, pearls draped perfectly across her collarbone, like they had been placed with intention. Her nails were manicured into soft pink ovals, not a single chip in sight. "Leora," she said without looking up, "have a seat." I sat opposite her, keeping my posture straight, my legs crossed just so. If she was going to measure me again, I'd let her, but on my terms. "I'll get straight to the point," she said, folding her hands in her lap. Her voice wasn't raised, but it had the authority of someone used to obedience. "You're clever, so I won't waste either of our time." I said nothing, just waited. "I don't think you and Holden are right for each other." A long pause settled between us. I held her gaze, gave her nothing. Then she reached to the side table and placed a small white envelope on the coffee table between us. Neat, unassuming. "There's $700 inside," she said. "Enough for you to take a short trip. Somewhere quiet, clear your head. And when you come back, don't come back here." I blinked. For a second, I thought I'd misunderstood her. She continued, her tone even. "You'll land on your feet. You're a smart woman, Leora. But let's not pretend we both don't know. My son needs someone who understands legacy, not someone who complicates it." I looked at the envelope. It wasn't the money that stunned me. It was the insult wrapped inside it. $700? As if that was my price tag. "That's a very specific number," I said, leaning forward just slightly. Evelyn offered a tight smile. "It's enough for dignity. If you know when to leave." My fingers brushed against the envelope. Smooth paper, crisp edges. I didn't tear it, didn't toss it back at her. Instead, I slipped it into my handbag and stood. "Thank you for the clarity," I said. She didn't flinch. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I paused at the door. I won't, I replied. Not for me. When I stepped outside, the sun had broken through the clouds. It should have felt warmer than it did. I didn't drive home immediately. I stopped at a nearby cafe, ordered a black coffee I barely touched, and sat by the window staring at nothing in particular. The envelope sat in my bag like a ticking clock. People walked by outside, mothers with strollers, teenagers with iced lattes, older men holding newspapers under their arms. They all looked like they belonged. It hit me then that Evelyn didn't just want me gone, she wanted me erased, removed from the picture cleanly, with no trace, no drama, just disappear. It wasn't about legacy, it was about control, and I was inconvenient. After sitting for nearly an hour, I finally headed home. The traffic was slow, and I welcomed it. It gave me time to think. Not rage, not hurt, just time. At home, I dropped my keys into the dish near the door and walked to my bedroom. I opened the drawer in my nightstand, slid the envelope inside, and turned the key in the lock. Then I walked away from it. That envelope stayed locked up, untouched. Not because I was afraid of what it represented, but because I didn't need it to remind me of what I was up against. I thought I might cry, but I didn't. Instead, I opened my laptop and drafted an email to myself. Just one sentence. Let them play their game. I'll write my own rules. The following days passed in a strange kind of stillness. Holden didn't call. I didn't reach out. There were no arguments, no explanations. Just a long, aching silence. The kind that starts to feel permanent. Then, one Thursday evening, as I was reviewing a brand campaign for a client, my phone buzzed. It was a forwarded email, no subject line, no message, just a single thread, the kind you're never meant to see. It came through while I was rinsing out my coffee mug, an alert from Dana, my closest friend since college. She always knew when something wasn't right, and she never sent vague emails. The subject line was blunt. You need to see this. I dried my hands on a dish towel, opened the laptop again, and clicked. The email had one attachment, just one. It was a screenshot, followed by a short forwarded thread. My cursor hovered, hesitant. Then I opened it. Group thread. Subject, the gala reveal. The participants, Holden's cousin Oliver, Aunt Meredith, and of course, Evelyn. We'll make it public at the charity dinner. Evelyn wants to announce Holden's engagement to Verity Shaw. It'll be a surprise. Leora will be there, apparently. Should be awkward. The words landed like cold water down my back. I read it once, then again, and again. I don't know how long I sat there, but my fingers went numb before my brain even registered what I'd seen. Verity Shaw. I hadn't heard that name in 2 years, not since Holden told me she was a chapter already closed. A porcelain type, born with good cheekbones and better connections. She was Evelyn's dream match for him, polished, Ivy League, and always agreeable. Apparently, I was just the intermission. I stared at the screen, frozen. Then, without meaning to, I laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because that kind of betrayal was too sharp to cry about right away. My hands moved on their own, closing the lid of my laptop. I stood slowly, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself water I didn't drink. The afternoon light was fading outside, casting long shadows across the tile. I watched them stretch, swallowing the floor. That night, Holden came home at 8:37 p.m., later than usual but early enough that he wouldn't need an excuse. He smelled faintly of cologne that wasn't the one I bought him. He set his keys in the bowl by the door, shrugged off his coat, and offered me a soft, "Hey." I kept my voice steady. "How's your mom?" He blinked at the question. "She's fine. She's just been planning this charity thing. She wants everything to be perfect." I smiled. "Barely. She always does." Holden stepped into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and grabbed a bottle of sparkling water. She just wants everyone to be happy, you know? Everyone, not me. Not really. I wanted to confront him right then, wanted to throw that email in his face and watch the lie crumble. But a small, still voice inside me said, not yet. So I asked instead, do you think people can love someone and still betray them? He paused mid-sip. What kind of question is that? I met his eyes. The kind that answers itself. He didn't push. He never pushed when it might force him to deal with something uncomfortable. Instead, he muttered something about taking a shower and disappeared down the hallway. When I heard the water running, I went to the bedroom and opened the drawer beside my bed. The envelope was still there, sealed, untouched. I lifted it, weighed it in my hand. $700. Not enough to erase me, but apparently enough to try. I could have shredded it, burned it, tossed it into the street. But instead, I slid it back into place and closed the drawer again. Let them think I'm still deciding. They expected me to break quietly, to leave before things got loud. But I've learned something they clearly haven't. Silence isn't surrender. It's preparation. The next few days passed like slow-motion reruns of a life I was no longer part of. Holden barely noticed. He was in meetings, on calls, or too tired for dinner. I didn't push. I cooked meals he didn't touch, left laundry folded neatly on his side of the bed, and let him think the routine was still intact. Meanwhile, I planned. I RSVP'd to the gala without saying a word to him. I had no intention of missing it. Thursday evening, Dana stopped by my apartment with a bottle of wine and sharp eyes. "You okay?" she asked, kicking off her shoes. I shrugged. "Define okay." She poured us each a glass and sat across from me. "You know you don't have to go to that dinner." "I know," I said, "but I'm going." "You want revenge?" I looked down at the wine in my glass, swirling it slowly. "No, I want the truth to sting just as much as the lie." Dana leaned forward. "You sure you're ready for whatever they throw at you?" I met her gaze. They should be the ones worried. That night, long after Dana left, I stood in my closet staring at rows of dresses. Satin, silk, soft blues, soft grays. Everything that whispered understated. Everything I was supposed to be. But I didn't want to whisper. I wanted to walk in and say everything without saying a word. So I pulled out the black dress I wore to my father's memorial. Simple, strong, unmistakable. This time, it wouldn't be for mourning. It would be for clarity. I zipped up the dress slowly, smoothing the fabric over my hips. The black silk didn't shimmer. It absorbed light like it was made for moments like this. I pinned my hair up without trying too hard. No jewelry except small pearl studs. A nod to quiet defiance. This time, it wasn't about looking pretty. It was about being unshakable. The drive downtown took just under 40 minutes. I didn't play music. I let the silence carry me, steady my thoughts. When I pulled up to the valet line outside the Grant Ballroom, I saw the chandeliers flickering through the glass entrance, reflections of a world that smiled too much and meant too little. Inside, everything gleamed. The place was dressed in gold and deep blue, and the air smelled faintly of champagne and something expensive I couldn't name. Laughter floated above the crowd like perfume, sweet but cloying. I checked my coat, kept my posture firm, and stepped into the main room. Eyes found me fast. Some lingered. Some flinched away just as quickly. I wasn't part of their script, and they didn't know what to do with that. Holden stood near the dais, flanked by Evelyn and several board members. He was laughing, nodding, the perfect son. He didn't look at me, not even once. But Evelyn did. Her smile cut across the room like a scalpel. Precise, cold, practiced. I returned it with a slight nod, then moved toward the bar, weaving through conversations that died mid-sentence as I passed. I didn't care. Behind the bar, Joel Pena, the same waiter from before, recognized me. "You look strong tonight," he said, almost a whisper. I paused, taken aback for half a second. Then I nodded. "That's the goal." He handed me a glass of still water, and I made my way to my table. The speeches started shortly after the first course. Some local politicians said a few words about community. A trustee spoke about legacy. Someone from the foundation gushed about the importance of tradition in modern philanthropy. Then Evelyn stepped up to the microphone. She wore emerald green, her power color. Her voice was warm, confident, deliberate. "My son has always made me proud," she began. "His compassion, his ambition, and his dedication to continuing our family's mission." The room hushed. "Tonight, I have the honor of introducing someone very special, someone who represents the future of our family." No one at my table moved. I didn't need to guess what was next. "Please, welcome Verity Shaw." Applause erupted. I didn't clap. Verity emerged from behind the curtain like a stage prop in a Broadway reveal. Hair perfect, dress flawless, smile fixed and ready. She hugged Evelyn like a daughter should. Then she kissed Holden on the cheek, slow enough for the photographers to capture every angle. My chest tightened, but I didn't blink. I lifted my water glass, sipped, and set it down evenly. Joel appeared again, quietly stepping to my side. "You okay?" I looked up at him and nodded. "Better than they think." Then I did something unexpected. I clapped. Once, twice, 3 times. Slow, deliberate. Conversations around the room faltered. Heads turned. Evelyn's gaze snapped toward me. Her face faltered for just a breath. "You're full of surprises, Ms. Ames," she said into the mic, trying to keep the room on her side. It landed half laughing, half shaken. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "I like surprises," I said, "especially the kind that show people's true nature." A hush spread like spilled wine across white linen. Then I stood, adjusted my dress, and turned toward the exit. Each step was silent, but not quiet. I could feel them watching, listening, judging, whispering. I didn't look back. Outside, the night air slapped the heat off my skin. A breeze picked up, tugging at the edges of my coat as the valet brought my car around. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just whispered to no one. "They think this is over." It wasn't. I went home, removed my makeup slowly, methodically, like wiping away war paint. My phone buzzed twice, both from unknown numbers. I didn't check. I placed the dress back on its hanger, smoothed it flat, and zipped it into its garment bag. I poured a glass of wine but didn't drink it. I just stood by the window, watching the city light bleed into dawn. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't need to, because tomorrow I'd speak in a language they understood: power. The morning sunlight filtered through my blinds, soft and steady, but my phone was anything but. It vibrated against the nightstand like it had somewhere urgent to be. I blinked once, then reached for it, already sensing the change in the air. 6 missed calls, 9 new texts, 24 email alerts. It was Dana who broke through the fog first. Her name flashed across the screen, followed by a breathless voice the second I answered. "Leora, tell me you did this on purpose." I sat up, rubbed my eyes. "Do what?" "The Cress Foundation," she said. "You're all over the news. That donation, 50 grand, under your name, it's everywhere. People are losing their minds." I slid out of bed and walked barefoot to the kitchen. The tile was cold, grounding. "I didn't expect it to hit that fast," I said, grabbing a mug, "but I'm not exactly surprised." "Girl, did you just drop a bomb?" "More like a mirror." She paused. "You're dangerous. I love it. But Evelyn's gonna lose her pearls over this." I smiled as I poured the coffee. Good. The articles were multiplying by the minute. One outlet called it an unexpected display of generosity. Another ran a photo of me at the gala with the headline, "Who is Leora Ames, the woman changing the Crest narrative?" I didn't need to click. I knew what it said. A woman who didn't play by their rules had just written a new one. By noon, Evelyn had called 3 times. I ignored the first 2. The third came just as I was finishing lunch, a half salad I couldn't taste. I let it ring until I couldn't pretend anymore. Her voice was thinner than usual, like it had been pressed through clenched teeth. "Leora, this is highly irregular. You didn't need to make such gestures." I kept my tone even. Gestures? I thought this was about family legacy. I just wanted to contribute. A long pause. I could almost hear her eyes blinking behind the silence. "I see," she finally said. "You always said legacy matters. I'm simply honoring that." She didn't respond right away, and I didn't wait for her to. I ended the call before she could spin it. That afternoon, Holden showed up at my door unannounced. No text, no knock, just the sound of his key turning. He stepped in like a man who expected forgiveness to be waiting on the couch. He looked good, of course. He always did. But something about him seemed smaller now, lighter, in a way that didn't feel free, more like hollow. "You shouldn't have done that," he said, without hello. I raised an eyebrow. "Come in, then. Say more." He shut the door behind him, sighing. "My mother's furious. She thinks you're trying to embarrass her." I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms folded. If generosity embarrasses her, she might want to rethink her definition of grace. "She says it looks like you're trying to buy respect." I tilted my head. "Aren't you all about appearances?" He didn't answer that. He ran a hand through his hair. "You've made things harder." "No," I said, turning to look out the window where the street was bathed in quiet gold. "I made things even." He didn't stay long after that. He mumbled something about needing to get back to work. I didn't walk him out. That night, I curled up on the couch with my laptop open. Not to work, just to watch it all unfold. One article stood out, not because of its headline, but because of the author. Leora Ames, the unknown power behind Crest Foundation's expansion. It was cleanly written. No dramatics, just facts, pieced together with care. There was a line about the gala, how Verity's sudden appearance was overshadowed by an anonymous donation until the name behind it was revealed. At the bottom of the page, the byline, "Joel Pina, the waiter." He'd seen everything. Not just what happened on stage, but what happened between the silences, who held the real weight in that room. A few minutes later, an email came through, short, honest. People should know who really paid for that night. I stared at the message for a long time, then I typed back, "Thank you, for seeing." It wasn't revenge I was after. Not really. It was balance, recognition, the right to exist without needing permission. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like something to be edited out of someone else's picture. I felt seen. But clarity has a price, and power, when taken back, doesn't go unnoticed. I knew Evelyn wouldn't let this sit. She lived in a world where control wasn't suggested. It was enforced, quietly, elegantly, ruthlessly. So when I walked into my office 2 days later and found the envelope on my desk, I didn't need to read the return address. I already knew where it came from. It wasn't handwritten, but the choice of stationery spoke volumes. Creamy, thick, expensive. A signature scent lingered faintly, something floral and sharp. I slipped a finger under the flap and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a copy of the most recent board memo from the Crest Foundation. And there it was, my name, removed. No reason, no explanation, just gone, erased again. But this time, I didn't feel erased. This time, I felt ready. That didn't mean I wasn't tired. Tired of playing nice. Tired of playing invisible. Tired of pretending I didn't see what was happening or who was behind it. The letter came folded perfectly, placed inside an envelope thick enough to carry secrets. No return address. But the crest was clear, the Crest Foundation's signature gold seal. The kind of paper you use when you're making history or rewriting it. I unfolded it slowly, just one paragraph. Effective immediately, Ms. Leora Ames's contributions will no longer be recognized in public statements or donor materials per family discretion. No greeting, no explanation, no signature. Just silence, dressed up as policy. I read it again, then again. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I did. It was a quiet, surgical cut. They didn't confront me. They didn't accuse me. They just removed me. Like a smudge on a painting they didn't want to admit someone else had touched. I held the letter between my fingers for a long time, until the edges curled slightly. My hands were still, but I felt my jaw tighten. That slow ache that always gave me away. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. Instead, I placed the letter on the coffee table like it was nothing more than junk mail. But I didn't walk away from it. That night, Dana came over unannounced, carrying Thai food and wine like an apology for the world. She saw the envelope before I said a word. "Oh no," she said, setting down the bag and walking straight to the table. She picked it up, skimmed the contents, then looked at me. "This is how they're doing it now?" "No press release, no scandal, just gone," I said. "They're scared of you," she muttered. "That's what people do when they're scared. They rewrite the story so you're not in it." "Maybe," I said quietly, "but it still works. They erased me, and the world will believe them." Dana sat down across from me, her tone calm but firm. "Unless you make sure they don't." We ate in silence after that. Or rather, we picked at our food. Neither of us was really hungry. The wine helped more than the noodles. The next morning, I got to the office early, hoping to lose myself in work. I needed normalcy, or at least the illusion of it. I powered on my computer, opened my inbox, and clicked the internal newsletter link. It loaded slowly, like it knew what was coming. There it was. My bio, neatly laid out, my credentials still listed, my degrees, my current title, my leadership work. But one line was missing. Board contributor, Crest Foundation. Gone. Just like that. No alert, no edit history, just a quiet subtraction. Someone had reached beyond the foundation, into my workplace, my reputation, and they'd done it without hesitation. I stared at the screen, breathing slowly through my nose. This wasn't about a donation. This wasn't about embarrassment. This was about power. They weren't content to ignore me. They needed others to ignore me too, to make sure the version of the story left behind didn't include me at all. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A message from Holden. "Mom's upset. You pushed her too far. Can we just make peace?" Peace. I stared at the word. Not anger, not hurt. Just resignation. I typed, then erased. "You watched her do it." Instead, I replied, "We'll talk soon." I put my phone face down and stood up from my desk. The office around me hummed with its usual rhythm. Calls, printers, distant laughter. But everything in my own space had gone still. That evening, I sat on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by a small stack of memories. Printed articles, photographs, emails confirming my involvement with the foundation, invitations to meetings, letters of thanks, donation receipts. A trail of proof, each one stamped and dated. Proof that I had been part of it. Proof that I mattered. And still, it wouldn't be enough. Because the truth is, visibility isn't permanent. You can be seen today, celebrated even, and by tomorrow, edited out of the very story you helped shape. It wasn't about public credit. It wasn't even about the gala anymore. It was about identity, mine. I looked at the drawer by my desk. The envelope Evelyn had handed me weeks ago was still in there, still unopened. I pulled it out, held it in my hand, still white, still sealed, still smug. But this time I didn't put it away. I left it on top of my desk. Let it sit there under the glow of my desk lamp, a reminder, not of the bribe, not of what they offered, but of what they feared. I still had something Evelyn couldn't erase: time and patience. She wanted me to walk away quietly, but erasing me would come at a cost, one she hadn't counted on, because I was done waiting to be invited to the table. I was already building my own place, my own voice, my own version of legacy that didn't beg for permission or ask to be seen. So when the message came, short, almost casual, I didn't ignore it. I stared at the screen for a full minute. Lunch? I think it's time you and I talked. Woman to woman. Verity. It felt like a trap, or worse, pity. But curiosity, that small, dangerous flicker that lives inside every woman who's ever been underestimated, won out. The next day was overcast. One of those gray skies that makes the whole city feel like it's holding its breath. I left work a little early, walked the 8 blocks to the hotel she'd picked, and took the elevator to the rooftop cafe. It was all white umbrellas and soft jazz, clinking glasses and smiles that didn't reach eyes. The kind of place people went to be seen while pretending they didn't care about being seen. Verity arrived 10 minutes late. She wore beige. Not just beige, expensive beige. The kind that whispers, "I'm not trying hard," even when it's clearly all effort. "I'm surprised you said yes," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. I looked at her evenly. "I'm surprised you asked." She smiled, a brief curve of the mouth, no warmth. The waiter came and poured water. Neither of us touched it. "Let's skip the polite stuff," she said, brushing an invisible crumb from the tablecloth. "I know what Evelyn's doing to you." I tilted my head. "What exactly is she doing?" "She's erasing you, quietly, the same way she did with me." I blinked. That wasn't the sentence I expected. "She made me disappear too," Verity continued. "Years ago, I dated Holden for a few months back in college. It wasn't serious, not for him anyway, but Evelyn saw something in me. A future, a puppet." I sat still, letting her talk. She told me, straight to my face, that I was almost right. Then she painted this perfect little version of me and pushed it in front of every family friend, every board member. The image stayed. I didn't. She leaned back, her voice quiet but clear. "That gala? I didn't know she was going to announce the engagement. There was no engagement." I narrowed my eyes. "Then why'd you go along with it?" "Because I was tired," she said, "and because I figured if she humiliated you in public, you'd fold and disappear like I did." I nodded slowly. "But I didn't." "No," she said, "you didn't, and that's why I asked to meet." The wind caught the edge of the napkin between us. I pressed it down without thinking. She looked at me carefully. "You don't need to fight her in the open. You'll never win that way. She controls too many rooms, too many stories, but if you let her, she'll unravel herself." I raised an eyebrow. "That's a nice idea, but people like her don't self-destruct. They're built too carefully." Verity leaned forward just slightly, enough for me to smell her perfume, something expensive and restrained. "Let her make one more move, one, and then you show everyone what she's become. You won't have to say anything. The truth will do the work." She stood, checked her phone, then turned back as she slung her purse over one shoulder. "When she falls, don't gloat, just smile. That'll bother her more." I watched her walk away. measured, practiced. Still a little haunted. I stayed at the table for a while after she left, stirring my untouched water. I wasn't sure what I felt. Gratitude, pity, strategy? By the time I got home, dusk had settled into every corner of the apartment. The air was cool, a little damp, like something was shifting. I made tea I didn't drink. Opened the window, sat at my desk. The white envelope was still there. I picked it up, held it to the light. Then slowly, deliberately, opened it. 7 crisp $100 bills. And a note written in Evelyn's hand. "You'll thank me someday." There it was. No threats, no instructions. Just arrogance, dressed as generosity. I stared at the bills for a long time, then folded the note neatly and slid it into a fresh envelope. On the front, I wrote 2 words in black ink. "Your turn," no signature, no return address, just enough to rattle. I sealed the flap, pressed it flat, and set it next to my keys. It wasn't revenge, not yet. It was symmetry. The next morning, I walked to the post office just before work, the envelope tucked into my coat pocket like a secret. I sent it registered mail. To Evelyn. That night it rained, not the light kind that cools the pavement, but the kind that thunders without apology, the kind that makes windows rattle and people drive slower. I watched the storm roll in from my apartment window, fingers wrapped around a lukewarm mug of chamomile. I didn't sip, just held it, grounding myself. By morning, the city smelled like metal and wet concrete. I got dressed in silence. Navy blazer, dark jeans, hair tied back, no lipstick. I didn't want a mask today. I wanted them to see me. When I stepped off the elevator into the Crest Foundation's executive floor, the receptionist looked up with a flicker of confusion. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," I said simply. "But they'll want to hear what I have to say." The boardroom door was open when I approached. I could hear the usual shuffle of papers, the murmurs of wealthy men pretending to debate. I walked in without knocking. Thunder echoed somewhere behind me, distant but heavy. Evelyn sat at the head of the long walnut table, calm, polished, her signature silk scarf knotted with intention. Holden was seated beside her, arms folded, eyes tired. Verity was further down, silent, unreadable. "Miss Ames," Evelyn said crisply without turning her head. "This meeting is private." "I know," I said, placing a slim manila folder on the table. "That's why I'm here." A hush fell like mist. Not shock, not yet, but discomfort. People don't know what to do when someone breaks rules they weren't brave enough to question. Evelyn's eyes didn't move to the folder. "If you're here to make a scene," "I'm not," I said. "I'm here to return something, and to show you something." She didn't reach for the envelope, so I opened it myself. I pulled out copies, all neatly organized, each page marked and time-stamped. I set them down in front of her, one by one. Email threads showing misdirected donations, receipts, clothing, luxury goods, dinners billed to the foundation. A resignation letter from a former accountant who warned the board about reputation-masking recurring misuse of funds. I didn't say a word as I laid each piece in place. I didn't need to. Evelyn's knuckles tightened around her pen. Holden leaned forward, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. "Mom, this isn't real, right?" She glanced at him just once, and I saw it, the flicker of calculation, of delay, not denial, just strategy. "Sit down," she said through her teeth. He stayed frozen, staring at the papers like they were in a language he didn't speak. "I'm not doing this for revenge," I said, looking at no one in particular. "You taught me better than that, Evelyn. You said appearances matter more than facts, but I have both." I pulled out the final item, the original envelope, the one she gave me months ago, stuffed with $700 and her flippant little note. I placed it gently atop the pile. "This," I said, voice steady, was the moment you underestimated me. You thought I'd take your money and disappear. You thought I needed your approval more than I needed my name." No one moved. The board chair cleared his throat. "Ms. Kress, I think we need a moment alone to discuss." Evelyn cut in. "You don't know what she's capable of." He held up a hand. "We'll handle this internally," which was code for, "You're done here." I didn't gloat. I didn't even look at her as I gathered my coat from the back of the chair. Before I turned to leave, I paused, not for effect, but because I wanted the timing right. "Oh, and Evelyn," I said, without looking back, "you'll thank me someday." The same words she had once scribbled on a note, arrogant and certain. Outside, thunder cracked again. It sounded like a door slamming shut behind me. Verity stood near the elevator, coat in hand, waiting. She didn't say anything until the doors closed. "I told you," she whispered, "let her destroy herself." "And she did," I said. Neither of us smiled. There was no triumph in this, just release. When I stepped back into the street, the rain had stopped. The sky was still gray, but the kind of gray that feels like it might break into sunlight. I didn't go home right away. I walked for a while, nowhere in particular. Past store windows filled with mannequins, past couples arguing about umbrellas, past tourists staring up at buildings like they were made of dreams. I ended up at the small park near my building, the one with the rusted swing set no child ever seemed to use. I sat on the bench and just listened. To the wind, to the soft splash of tires on wet pavement, to my own breath settling into something slower, steadier. Because power taken from someone doesn't disappear. It just waits for a quieter hand to pick it back up. And I had picked it up, finally, on my own terms. Not with fire, but with truth, came a kind of stillness I hadn't expected. Not the quiet of retreat or defeat, but the kind that follows after a long, necessary storm, when the air clears, but everything's damp, raw, honest. You don't rebuild right away. You breathe. You take stock. 3 weeks passed. No more reporters, no anonymous emails, no more whispers in elevators or nods of false sympathy. The board had accepted Evelyn's resignation, issued a statement dressed in vague language and carefully measured regret. Just enough to say something without admitting anything. I stayed out of it, until this morning. I was barefoot in the kitchen, watching the kettle sputter toward a boil, when a knock came at the door. Soft, unsure. When I opened it, Holden stood there, older somehow, though only days had passed. His suit was wrinkled, tie loosened, like he'd lost the energy to pretend he hadn't fallen apart. "She's leaving," he said, skipping any kind of greeting. I stepped aside so he could come in. He didn't. "Switzerland," he continued. "My aunt's place. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere people don't ask questions." I folded my arms. "That sounds about right." "She wanted me to ask if you'd speak to her, one last time." I looked past him, out toward the ocean just visible between the buildings. The tide was low, the waves small. There was nothing left in me to give that woman, no anger, no pity, no words. "There's nothing to say," I told him. He looked at me with the weight of a man who'd realized far too late that choosing silence doesn't keep you clean. It just makes you complicit. "You didn't have to do any of this," he said. "You could have just walked away." I met his eyes. I did walk away. I just made sure the door closed behind me. He opened his mouth, maybe to protest or apologize. I'll never know. "I'm sorry," he whispered instead. It wasn't enough. But it was something. After he left, I stayed by the window for a while, watching people move through their lives. Dog walkers, coffee runners, an older couple walking slowly with matching canes. The world kept going, and I was finally catching up to it. Dana arrived around lunchtime, letting herself in like always. She carried 2 coffees and that lopsided smirk that told me she'd already heard everything. "You look different," she said, handing me a cup. "Do I?" I asked. "Yeah, like someone who finally put down the weight she didn't even know she was carrying." I didn't say much, just nodded and let the warmth of the cup bleed into my hands. We sat on the couch in silence for a few minutes. Comfortable, easy. Dana never needed to fill the quiet. That's why I loved her. Later that night, just as I was folding laundry, Verity called. Her voice was crisp, but softer than usual. "I saw the news." Of course she had. "You handled it well," she added. "Better than I did back then." "Maybe too quietly," I murmured. "No," she said. "That's why it worked. The loud ones get dismissed. You made it stick." When we hung up, I wandered back into my office. The same space where Evelyn had first handed me the white envelope, the one she thought would silence me. It was still in the drawer, unopened since the fire. I hadn't touched it since, just kept it as a reminder of how little she thought of me. I took it out now, ran my thumb along the edge. There was no rage left in it, no bitterness, just a memory, dry and weightless. I walked to the fireplace, crouched down, and lit a match. As the flame curled into life, I fed the envelope gently into the fire. It caught quickly, the paper folded inward like it was bowing, and then ash, not revenge, not closure, just peace. Behind me, the room glowed softly. The ocean murmured beyond the window, unbothered by everything I'd just laid to rest. I sat down at my desk, no emails, no urgent decisions waiting. Just stillness. In the reflection of the glass, I noticed something. The Centurion card Evelyn had once dangled like a prize. It sat now beside a paperweight, quiet and unimportant. A symbol of power, maybe, but no longer mine. Not because I'd lost it, but because I didn't need it anymore. I didn't need to prove my value to anyone. Not to Evelyn, not to Holden, not even to myself. The cost had already been paid, with silence, with patience, and with truth. In full.